10 years ago, the Amazing Spider-Man movie featuring Andrew Garfield came out. Now, there's a lot of memorable scenes in this film, but for some reason, one of the scenes towards the end of the movie just stuck out to me. So Andrew Garfield's playing Peter Parker, and he comes walking into class late. And Gwen Stacy, his love interest, is sitting there, and the English teacher is teaching a lesson while he walks in. And here's what she says. She said, "I had a professor once who used to tell his students that there were only 10 plots in all of fiction. Well, I'm here to tell you he's wrong. There's only one. Who am I?" She's right, isn't she? Pretty much every fictional movie is about the character. Who is the character? Who am I? So the recent Top Gun film, don't worry, I won't ruin anything. The question is, who's Maverick? Is he the same? Has he changed? Yes, it's been 36 years, parents. Recent Thor movie that releases July 5th, not that I'm counting. The question is, who is Thor now that the Avengers have broken apart? That's the question in fiction. And students, that's the question you're asking right now. Who are you? Who are you? When you venture out from your friends, you venture out from your family, you venture out from your tight-knit community of CVCS, the question is, what story are you going to tell? Who will you be? Next year will be my 20th year at CVCS. I started before my son, who is graduating, was born. And I taught high school Bible full-time for a decade. And one of the things I tell my students when they graduate, I said, please come back and visit us. And I'd love to have you come into my classroom and talk about your experience now that you're out in the real world. So my very second year teaching, first year a student came back. I'll never forget, she was talking to my high school seniors. And she said this, because I want you to remember it. She said, you know, when I was at CVCS, everybody knew me. My teachers knew me. My coaches knew me. My classmates knew me. It was a small world. It felt like a big world, but it was small and everybody knew me. The moment I set foot on a campus, in her case, in another state, all of a sudden, nobody knew me. She said, I started to realize I could leave everything behind. I could write a new script. She said the question was, who was I going to be? Now, this is what our culture encourages, right? We hear people say things like this all the time. You be you. Live your truth. Be true to yourself. Express yourself. The world we live in has some answers, students, for who you are. Here's the kinds they'll say. Some will say, you are your bank account. There will be more temptations than you can imagine to define yourself by the amount of money and things that you have. That is so seductive in America. Recently in my high school Bible class at CVCS, I asked the students, I said, here's a question for you. Would you rather be wealthy and have broken relationships, or have good relationships and be poor? It didn't take them very long to say, I'd rather be poor, but have good relationships. Money's not going to make you happy. It's not going to define who you are. You know what else our culture says? Is your social media following will define you for who you are. The number of clicks and likes and subscribers, the more you have, seemingly the more important you are. Can I tell you, I've played this game, and there's always more views, there's always more subscribers, there's always more clicks. It is like chasing your tail if you think social media is going to define who you are. How about this one? You are your fame. Right, get famous. So then other people, if they envy your life and know who you are and recognize you, then you'll be happy. I think if anything is pretty clear over the last 3 to 4 months, I won't mention any names, but two of the most famous and well-known actors in the world, let's just say, have had some public drama and made it very clear to the world that they're no happier than the rest of us, if not a lot less happy than the rest of us. Fame's not going to make you happy. What about this one? This is huge on social media. You are your looks, right? People judge us by our looks. It was interesting. I did a little bit of research with the new Top Gun movie coming out, that it's missing a very key character from the 1980s movie, which was Tom Cruise's love interest by the name of... Oh, this is not church. You're actually participating here. You know the answer to this one. I didn't hear any answers behind me, but all of you knew it. Kelly McGillis, right? She was the beauty from Top Gun. Why isn't she in the recent film? This is public. I'm not ruining anything. Why isn't she in it? Well, she's 64. That was just a fact. I wasn't, don't read too much into that. I just said she's 64. And she said her priorities have shifted. She's like, basically, I'm not in shape. I don't look like I used to. My life has moved on. You can be the beauty of the world, one of the most famous actresses, and guess what, young people? If your character is in your looks, it's going to fade. It's going to fade. I think asking the question, who am I, is the wrong question. I want to invite you to ask a different question. Let me frame it this way. I had a chance to play basketball for one of, I think, the greatest basketball coaches who's ever lived. He is number 5 right now on the all-time winningest coaches list, 4 below Coach Krzyzewski, all-time, any level. And he's probably going to move up to number 4 this year. He also has 4 masters and at least 1 doctorate. He's one of the most remarkable people that I know. You know what part of his secret was? He'd say much of life is just being reminded of what you know, but at the right time. So honestly, what can I tell you right now you haven't heard in chapel, you haven't heard in Bible class, you haven't heard from your parents? What can I tell you? I'm going to take my coach's advice to heart and just remind you of something that you already know. The question is not, who am I? The most important question anybody ever asked was when Jesus said, who do you say that I am? That's the question. Some of you, I don't know how many of you would know Evel Knievel. I know all of you know Evel Knievel. He was a stunt performer, a global icon. And he got famous because he jumped his motorcycle over the fountains at Caesar's Palace, Mack trucks, Shark tanks, still has the #1 spot for ABC's worldwide sports events for viewing. He's in the Guinness Book of World Records for having the most bone fractures and surviving. He passed away in 2007, but you know, shortly before his death, he actually had a radical life change. What a lot of people don't know is amidst the fame of Evel Knievel, he lived an incredibly immoral life. You think of what we associate with immoral living, and that was Evel Knievel. He was vain. He lived in debauchery. He served a prison sentence. He actually was so focused on himself that he had at least 2 private jets. He would fly one in the sky and the other one next to it so he could look out his private jet and see his name on the plane. Can you imagine that? But you know what's interesting is shortly before his death, he had a vision that rocked his life. You know what his vision was? He said that Jesus actually spoke to him. And at this point, keep in mind, he didn't even know who Jesus was. He just said, Jesus spoke to me and said, evil? Now, if you hear a voice that calls you evil, you better listen up. He said, I have saved you more times than you will ever know. Now I need you to come to me. And this famous global icon turned his life around and became a follower of Jesus. Do you know what he said his biggest regret was? It wasn't jumping across the Grand Canyon. It wasn't making more money. It wasn't being more famous. You know what his biggest regret was? One of the most famous people of the past half century. He said his biggest regret was that he didn't know Jesus earlier. He spent his life answering the question, who am I? Rather than, who is Jesus? I'm going to turn around and I'm going to speak to you, all of you. On behalf, I want you to look out. Here's your parents, here's your grandparents, here's your friends, family members. There's nobody who loves you more. I don't want to speak to all of you, but I want to speak to you. No father could be more proud of his son than I am of you. Coach Bond said she has never seen an athlete work harder than you. She's seen a lot of athletes. You are smart like your mom. You're an entrepreneur like your papa. You are one of the most generous people I know. There are multiple people on this stage with expensive pair of Jordans because you said, Dad, they don't have any stylish shoes. I gotta hook them up. And you spent your money doing it. Son, I love you and I'm proud of you. And what I said to you is what I know everybody here wants to say to every single one of you. You have been blessed to be at a Christian school. Basically, we've done our best. We care about your character. We care about your grades. We care about awards. But all that stuff pales in comparison to how you answer the question, who is Jesus? That's the question we hope you take to heart. I've met a lot of people like Evel Knievel who regretted not answering that question about Jesus earlier. But I've never met anybody who followed Jesus with their life and had an ounce of regret. That's our heart and our prayer for you. Love you, class of 2022. Love you, Scotty James. Thanks for letting me be your dad.